Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve ashabihi ecmaîn. Değerli kardeşlerim,
Distinguished brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, as I start my remarks, I would like to welcome you with you. May Allah's greetings and mercy be on you, and may you have an auspicious Friday. I hope that our meeting will become a big prayer of salvation, and may it be an opportunity for the salvation of our brothers and sisters in Gaza. May the happiness of our brothers and sisters in Syria be forever, and may it be an opportunity for them to walk in the right path. I would like to thank the President and the board members of Cihannuma Association for organizing this event and for inviting me. The title that was assigned to me is Rethinking the Role of Ulema in the Islamic communities. Today in the Islamic world, to rethink the role of ulama, we first need to understand the Islamic sciences from which the title of the ulama originates. And we also need to think what that way of thinking says about this age, because both questions are quite related to the question of what the Muslims of this age want. To give the right answer to this question, we need to clearly express what we mean by the word today. So today, in quotes, does it mean the global world, modernity, the Islamic world, the world of science? First of all, I would like to say that by the word today, I'm not referring to the modernity or the modern times. According to Sunnatullah, I refer to the change that is taking place, the changing humans, the changing societies, the changing time, the changing space, and the changing issues. The age that we are in, and it is the response that we give to the challenges of this time. By today, I do not mean an understanding of the age, but the understanding that we equip ourselves with according to the challenges of the time. Recently, the situation of the ulama is quite similar to the situation of Ashab al-Kahf in the Quran, because I see myself as their student. As you know, Ashab al-Kahf was a group of young people, and for 309 years they slept in a cave, and when they woke up, they felt hungry before anything else. They sent one of them to the city to buy food with some silver coins. But when that person went to the city center, everything has changed, and the money was not recognized by anyone. To the contrary, everyone took away his money and asked him where he came from and where he found the money. At the end, the young man could not buy anything with that money and went back to the cave to his friends. And today, those who dedicate their lives to Islamic life with their studies, with their books, The ulema, when they go to the world markets, they cannot get what they want. They cannot respond to the questions of the time. At this point, it would be the right thing to ask this question. The fact that Ashab-ı Kehf's money did not worth anything at the market, was that because that money went out of circulation, or was it because the people of that city did not see the value of that money, although it was a very valuable type of money? In other words, has the ulama became incapable of answering the questions of the time, or although being very wise, has the understanding of the time failed to understand the worth of these scholars? To rethink the role of ulama in the Islamic communities, we need to reflect on these questions. The question, who is a scholar or who are the ulama, has been discussed throughout the history. The most important factor is the concept of ilm, alim, and alem, which all originate from the same word. As our ideation of science expanded, our understanding of alim was expanded, and as our understanding of science was narrowed, our description of a scientist has narrowed as well. And the science has been reduced to the concept of natural and social sciences, and that has brought the most important narrowing in the meaning of science. For some time, only those who were familiar with fiqh were referred to as scholars. And at other times, only those who were familiar with ijtihad were referred to as ulema. Sometimes, on the basis of the procedures and methodologies of accessing knowledge, a definition of ulema or alim was offered. So they used it to refer to those who were familiar, who had the knowledge. And at times, due to scientific concerns, the definition of alim was narrowed down, and different types of definitions of alim emerged due to the presence of tekke and other institutions. So as the institutions where the alims studied sciences, their names and titles changed as well. The conflict between madrasa and tekke in the history and the dilemma of madrasa and university in modern times have changed the description of alim. Those who define themselves as alim, allame, the members of the madrasa, sometimes saw the followers of tekke as ignorant, and sometimes the members of tekke saw the members of madrasa as the ehli fisher or lubbe, or someone who has lost essence, who is only who is only knowledgeable. However, insan ihlas, irfan, and morals are the basis of tasawwur, but it's moving away from science has transformed tekkes into associations, and very recently into the digital figures and scenes of social media, and it makes them unable to offer a criticism in this area. In modern madrasa, in universities, the academics blame the ulema as being obsessed with the traditions, and sometimes they insulted them by calling them mullah. But the madrasa members blamed the academics as with violating the principles of Islam, or thinning down religion, or modernizing religion. And both groups attempted to undermine each other. In the subcontinent of India, where the conflict between religions has turned into a serious conflict, creates a potential of tension between these groups. So I'm trying to make a comparison, because if we want to have a more comprehensive session on rethinking the role of ulema, we need to look at different traditions in Islam. The subcontinent of India is an important territory. They have the madrasa and the scholars of madrasa in the classical sense. And on the other side, they also have conflicts between the mektab, the schools, and the madrasas. Although it is interrupted at times, it is although the system has been changed very frequently, Egypt has to be highlighted as an important example because it has trained many scholars throughout the years. And Hayati Kibal a tradition has also we also have to highlight the Hayati Kibal tradition in the Gulf countries, and in Malaysia we have a very valuable tradition, and we also need to highlight the fight between the Shia and the other sects in Islam. So I am just trying to offer an overall evaluation of the situation. As our scientific world become more fragmented, as the ulema lost their roles, as the scientific institutions diversified, and as the modern understanding of science developed, as westernization became more prominent, the alim and ulema became concepts that only reminded us of the past, and the madrasa, which lost its scientific power and its legal status. I'm talking about the madrasa in Turkey. It has become a nostalgic concept. Instead, intellectual, munawar, enlightened academics, scientists, and other similar names and wordings came into use. To rethink the role of ulama in the Islamic world, the people who have these new titles, like intellectuals, enlightened people, scientists, theologians, academics, and other groups, and their functions should be compared with the past roles of the ulama in history. In ancient times, alim was not a person who had the knowledge. He has an overall understand of knowledge. As Ghazali said, positive sciences are like food, and spiritual sciences are like drugs. So we need to take them together. So, in other words, the scholars of the ancient times were both intellectuals and enlightened, and they were thinkers. However, the intellectuals of this time are not this kind of people, and they are afraid of using the title of alim, scholar. Very recently, we had the Hadith meeting in Trabzon. The title of my presentation was, "What do the Hadith scholars say about today?" Some colleagues said, "Would it be better if you call them the Hadith researchers?" So the word alim, scholar, should not be used out of humility. But the intellectuality of Edward Said, or the enlightened man of Ali Said, has not replaced the word alim. Edward Said, as you know, suggested the concept of intellectual in one of his books. And he said to call someone an intellectual, he listed the moral principles that person should have. I think what he meant to say was, you have to be an intellectual, you have to be a leftist to be an intellectual. Since they were supporting the movements of westernization, they did not resonate with the society, and sometimes even overlooked by the society with the word intellectuals, or entel in Turkish. And Ali Shariati, in response to this, offered a definition of Muslim intellectual, but both concepts fail to reflect the position of the scholars, alims, had in history. Because an alim is a leading person who turns his knowledge into good practice. So an alim does not only have the knowledge. In Quran, Allah describes them as his witness with the angels, and Rasulullah, in his hadith, sees the scholars as his heir and all prophets' heirs. So this is the type of alim that we need to have. But I need to say that this heritage given to scholars does not give them religious sacredness or authority to the scholars, or it does not make them a member of the clergyman, as it is the case in the church, and it doesn't make them a clergyman, because everyone is a member of the clergyman in Islam. This concept says that they have some scientific responsibilities and religious responsibilities. And you would appreciate that it may not be possible for one person to have all of these qualities, but the ulema in Islam should have all of these characteristics today. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout history, the most important factor that defined the position of scholars was their knowledge in politics. The relationship between ulema and the politicians resulted in tensions throughout history. In the Quran, there was a struggle between the politicians and the alims, and the alims were always on the losing side in the struggle. And this loss was sometimes due to the pressure coming from the politicians, or sometimes out of being too close with politicians. Kuvveti Suzan, Ateşi Suzan is a word that the whole world is, the whole scholars are using. Being close to the Sultan is like standing close to the fire. In ancient times, the alims, to protect the law and people from the rule of the sultans, struggled very hard to avoid submitting to the rule. For example, many scholars were tortured. Even during the Abbasid, the governors sometimes could not even go out on the streets just because of that. And in these two areas which the alims wanted to save from the Sultan's hegemony were science and social sciences. To protect the law, they did not concede from the autonomy of the madrasa and the scientific institutions, and to protect social justice, they defended the independence of social domain from the political domain.
Otoritenin yan yana yürümesi
Throughout history, having the Sharia and the one ruler to work together with a cruel sultan, to go between the cruel sultan and the butchers have been very difficult. So the Islamic scholars have to lead with their knowledge, because they need to have both of the qualities and preserve those traditions. There have been two books written in near times. Both of them are called Al-Risale, one by Imam Shafi's Al-Risale and the other one by Ibn al-Muqaffa. The relationship between the two of them is very interesting. The other one is Al-Risalatul Ashab, which means Imam Shafi's Al-Risale means it talks about the authority, and it takes the authority from the rulers, and it doesn't even give them to the scholars, but to a tradition where the scholars have agreed on. Ibn Muqaffa comes from Iran, and according to him, the authority should be under the control of the Sultan. So the Sultan goes to Medina to Imam Malik and tells him that this book should be a law, a constitution, and it should be sent to the emsirs, but Imam Malik never accepts this. There are a lot of things that we can learn from those periods. Distinguished friends, dear friends, when we rethink the role of ulema in Islamic world, we need to learn about three eras of Islamic world and the place the ulema occupies in the Islamic world. We need to read this correctly. In the first, the classical period where the sciences are founded, and the second one is the stability, the development period, and the third period is the research period, the modern times, where we are seeking something. In both these periods, what did Islamic scholars tell to their communities? How did they carry continuity? These questions are important to answer to understand our modern times. In the foundation of Islamic world, there were four positions those as scholars to occupied: Mevcudiye, Makuliye, and Masukiye. and they were in a fight of existence. So mevcudiyet, existence, was the first position, and the relationship between continuity and change was built with these with these sciences, with fiqh and tasawwuf, with ethical and positive sciences, with kalam, with philosophy. They put out their reason and their consistency. With their translations from other countries, they enriched it with their knowledge, systems. They also made sure that the authenticity was proven. That was how those scholars carried the Mesukiyet, Meshuriye, Makuliye, and Mesukiyet. These four roles, and these four roles should be taken seriously again so that we can rethink the Islamic world. 5th and 6th centuries have a different dimension in terms of its political sciences, and there have been many different divides in Islamic world. In Baghdad, in Andalusia, in Egypt, there have been different halifas claiming themselves to be the one, and there have been internal wars as well as mall occupations, and there have been also been crusades. And in that period, many scholars thought that improving these knowledges would ensure continuity for Islamic world, while others thought that what the older generations have put out was enough, and they have stopped the independent judicial reasoning, and they have decided that building a new rota in terms of reason would be better, and a holistic, instead of a holistic Islamic thought, there have been other positive sciences and other sciences that have corrupted that tradition. There have been new limits between mind and reason, and with fiqh and different sects, there have been different ways of thinking, with positive sciences and spiritual sciences, which created an imbalance, and many scholars that lived in those times thought that Islamic sciences were not capable of answering their needs. Ghazali says in his Muqaddimah that the knowledge has died, the ilm has died, fiqh, hikmet, ziya, nur, hidayat, and rushd. These things where Allah defines in His book, they have been forgotten among people and they have been lost. That's what he has said. Ibn Khaldun has said in his Muqaddimah that Bashari Umran, or humanly Umran, has lost its foundation goal, and there has been a disruption. So Nas, which is a founding document, and the relationship between mind and has been changed, and the founding Wahi has changed, and Maqsad and Ma'ani has also been left out. I want to give another example from our Ottoman Empire. You have the name Cihan Numa from Katip Çelebi's book. Katip Çelebi noticed this. He also sees the internal conflicts in Istanbul with the Ulema, and remember the name of the book? Do you Mizanul Haq fi Diyarul Haq? With that book, in the entry in Mukaddime, he says, this spiritual and positive science is balance and how this balance has been changed. And in another works, he also, Katip Çelebi also mentions that in these lands, in his period, maybe in his period, the alims wouldn't call Katip Çelebi an alim. Maybe he would be called an intellectual alim. In our history, we may call him that, maybe. When we look at the modern times, after the 18th century, there have been a lot of changes, fights in terms of thought. If we could carry the information of Tanzimat scholars, if we could continue that, their things would be different. If in the subcontinent, with the Levi's movements in Egypt, in different places in the world, if we could reap the benefits of those movements, we would have a development, we would have prosperity, and we would be at a better place. In this time, in this status of modern times, what would Islamic scholars tell us? There are 4 methodological approaches in modern times. There have been 4 different approaches to this crisis. So there are 4 different intervention styles. Not only the 4 interventions, but 4 different thinking of style of thinking. So basically, we should bring these 4 divisions together. In Tirmiz, I had a conference, and the title was "How do you make peace among 2 different Tirmizi?" One is Ebu Heysa Tirmizi and one is Hakil Tirmizi. How do you make peace among these 2 people? Both of them have their books. One is Kitabul Eylar, one is Ispatul Eylar. One talks about hadith science, and the other one talks about ahkam. And he is exiled to Balkh in Afghanistan, and what we need to do in Islamic world is to bring these divisions together, bring and enlighten the scholars, the academicians, the intellectuals. We should remove all these separations. First one is the conservative, traditional, classical approach. It says everything necessary to meet the needs of the time is included in the Islamic traditions. The only thing wrong is that the Ummah has been corrupted. So the role of Muslims is to understand the texts, the classical texts. This mainstream thought doesn't even accept its own new approaches that are included in the tradition itself. So it freezes every tradition in a conservative way. It tries to preserve Islam. And the second approach is too traditional approach, that is Salafi, which focuses on in the first 3 centuries of approach. It focuses on return to Quran and Sunnah, to the substance, to the core. So the first generation's practices, they are seen as ideal, and they have this misunderstanding of following these people, which is called Salafi, and they look at hadith to continue Islamic sciences. And the third approach is the scientific method that stays within the fundamentals of Islam. They have 1,400 years of fundamentals. They are working to have a better developed approach, and they try to rebuild the connection with the founding people, and they try to reform and revive this way of thinking. This principle, fundamental approach is to be revived to ensure continuity. Fourth one is non-fundamentalist approaches. They try to stay within they think that it's impossible to stay within the tradition and within the principles. They think that there should be new principles, new fundamentals, and new traditions. These people think that sometimes, just like in the second category, they remove the 14th century and they have suggestions that have never been seen before. Those people who try to fix the crisis have become a cause for crisis themselves. These people turned these scientific thoughts into theological discussions. They have their non-mature thoughts. They have suggested them, making them even further with the first and the second approach. And I will be ending my remarks shortly. I should also mention that in modern times, the Islamic scholars have a completely different relation to Islamic sciences. They, instead of trying to solve those problems of ethics, morals, or humanity, they instead are trying to oppose these ideas. They think that the numbers of madrasas is going to answer those challenges. The more hadith, the more tafsir we read, we are going to answer these challenges. That's what they think. And with that approach, there are a number of Islamic institutions of modern times which have never been seen before. So the number of people who are learning and studying tafsir, the number of them is more than any before combined. In fiqh, kalam, tasawwur, in all of these scientific Islamic sciences, the number of people who have been studying them have a misunderstanding of increasing their numbers. And I would like to conclude my remarks by telling you that fatwa has taken the place of ijtihad in modern times. There are thousands of discussions that require ijtihad, and modern alims, instead of coming together, they go to the fatwa institution with founding people. They have unruly relations, and they have fatwas that object all the traditional fatwas, or they update the fatwas of the past. In the last decades, there have been many things that ruined the authority of Islamic scholars. Fatwa is the reason for that, because anyone who is seeking a fatwa can find a mufti. Even there have been people called mufti in cities, and there have been muftis that legitimize what rulers do in any city. So yesterday in Halep, a mufti was exiled. So alims have made huge mistakes and have given fatwas that are hard to understand by younger generations, and they have made serious political mistakes. Koca Eser, Arabic nationalism and socialism, has been studied by this man and then Nasser approach and socialism have been discussed, and there have been conferences to discuss these things, meetings, books have been written, articles have been written on these topics. And what should we do today? Before anything else, we should stay a bit within the principles of Islam, within the fundamentals of Islam, and we should focus on Khalidiyat, Khatimiyat, Alamiyat, these features of Islam, and we should make sure that alims are constantly rejuvenated, revived, or not only with the knowledge but with their souls, with their hearts. They should be revived, they should be updated. When we talk about fundamental principles, what do we mean? Mr. Ömer mentioned them, Ömer Hoca mentioned them. It's not only itikat or Islam, it's not just Islamic principles, not only the limits of Islam, not fıkıh either. With tasawwuf, with morals, with all these different notions coming together, that's the methodology that I'm talking about, with the local one and the global one, with bringing universal together with the spiritual and science, with human and the world, human and the afterlife, with all these different dichotomies, bringing them together to understand them correctly. This is a huge, encompassing, comprehensive fundamental that I'm mentioning. So I would like to end what I mean with a metaphor. Let's say you have a factory that has that manufactures satin fabrics, thousands of square meters of fabric, and every thousands of square meters you have spots or holes within that fabric with such a factory. So either you need to buy a lot of seamstresses or tailors to fix all of these holes, which doesn't make sense. It's going to be a waste of human power. Or you need to check the factory's hardware or the operation system to see the reason for these holes. That's the reasonable thing, and to see the reasons for those holes to manufacture perfect fabrics. Just like that, in our religious life, there have been many misunderstandings, many incorrect fatwas, many faulty hukums or jurisdictions, and there are two ways to fix them. Either we need to fix every misleading fatwas, or we need to fix the fundamentals, the operation system of Islam itself, to build a new way of thinking, understanding, and interpreting. Thank you for listening to me very patiently. Thank you.
Evet, kıymetli misafirler, hocamızı sahnede...
Yes, distinguished guests, we kindly ask our professor to stay on the stage for a little while. We would like to first thank him for his valuable speech and to deliver his plaque to the professor. I would like to invite to the floor the head of our association, Professor Ibrahim Akça. Distinguished guests, our program on this floor will continue, but we are delayed by 10 minutes. After a 10-minute break, the program will continue on this floor.